Ayin Beis, Volume 1, middle of Discourse 20, page 146, Chapter 78. In Chapter 77, the Rabbi began to conclude the discussion of the impact and influence and effect of the makifim, the transcendent energies and forces of Naran, nefesh, ruach, neshomo, which correspond to biyah. So going back chapters before, where he began the discussion, up till chapter 68, before Rosh Hashanah began, he concluded then, talking about the impact of the makif of teshivah, which is Malchus of Ein Sof, the 10 hidden spheres, the makif of the Igul HaGadol, the big sphere before the Tzimtzum. The impact of Ak, which is Tir Tata, the lower purity, and the impact of Keser Vatzilus. Those are the three. Then he summed up all the chapters, and then continued to understand after Keser Vatzilus there's also a Keser for each word of B'riyat Siyasiyah. But to explain that, he went to the whole discussion of Baruch She'amar and Birchas Yotzer, which enumerates essentially 5 levels. The makif of Yechida, Chaya, and then neshomo, ruach, nefesh. So, just for context purposes, the neshomo of the keser of Yechida, the makif of Yechida, he determined to be in Yotzer was Rachem Aleinu. That's Rachem Aleinu. That is Keser Malchus. That comes after Lekei Elam and Barachamecha Harabim, which is Bina, the way Malchus is in Bina, and then while Malchus is in Zoh and Midas, there's Hakeser is in Malchus, that's the Reimamus of Malchus, it elevates the Malchus. And that brings Tadenu Zenu, the Makif of Chaya, which essentially is Malchus of Atzilus. That's all within Malchus, as he says, as it's still in Atzilus. And that then brings the other 3, Mizgav, Mogin, and Sur, Mogin, and Mizgav, the 3 next Makifim of B'riyat Siyasiyah. What I've been struggling with, as I mentioned in the previous discussion, is the context now. How does it flow? So Ak, till Ak is fine. When you talk about Atzilus, is the bittul of Atzilus, seemingly there's some very deep similarities. In the chapter, we spoke about the bittul of Atzilus, which I just reviewed. There, the main point is that that impacts the souls, specifically souls, and what it does is it infuses them with a hidden love, ahava mishuteres and ru'usa deliba, edus the Yisroel. If you remember that they are a witness to something beyond, to save of kalam. And he also mentioned at the end of the chapter there, I'm talking about chapter 67, he also mentioned that the spontaneous thoughts of Shuva, that type of unconscious awareness that from time to time bursts through, comes also from the makif of Keser Vatzilus, which is far closer than the impact of Ak and Tehirah, because their impact is more from a distance. Ak is not as revealed, it's not as close to the Primi. Ak is more mysterious nefesh of the soul. It is the faith. Here, as he said, is closer to us. So on one hand, that's very similar to the bittul of Adenu Zenu. That's what it sounds like. Or definitely the bittul of Rachem Aleinu, because both are in Atzilus. Remember, Rachem Aleinu is also is Atzil Keser and Malchus. And when you look at the words, for example, in the beginning of this chapter that we just learned, chapter 77, he also says, when Malchus impacts Bina impacts Malchus, that's what wakes up, that's the mazel that wakes up the soul. He says, he uses exactly the same language at the beginning of chapter 77 as he does at the end of chapter 67, 10 chapters earlier. So it makes me want to believe that that's very similar. Bina of Atzilus impacting Malchus of Atzilus is essentially, in a way, similar to that Keser. If not, we're going to deal with another level here. Where's it coming from? On the other hand, it says the Keser of Atzilus, and this is Bina. But again, on the other hand, he did say in chapter, I'm just being technical here, but I'm trying to get the level exact. He did say in chapter 74 that Keser Malchus is Rachem Aleinu. So that is Keser. The Keser of Atzilus is not Tchilasan B'Seifon, Iyu Keser, Malchus Iyu Keser. So apparently you can simply connect and say that the Keser of Atzilus impacting chapter 74 is the same bittul that he's talking about in chapter 67. But I put that on the table. Be more than happy to hear you all review it and tell me what you think. Because I'd rather it be that way than if not, then you have to say, okay, so it's like some type of, there's a break here. It's chapter 67, he talks about Keser, he's talking all the Kesarim. Talking about the Keser, first the effect of Makif of before the Tzimtzum. Then the Makif of Keser Klali before the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzumat. Then the Keser of Atzilus. And then suddenly now he's going to other levels. So it seems to me that in order to reconcile that, probably chapter 67 and chapter 74 are similar level of bittul. At least Keser Malchus. Then comes the effect of Bina on Malchus, which is an additional point, and then come the three Ksarim of nefesh, ruach, neshomo, ruach, nefesh of bria, yirah, asiyah. You follow what I'm saying? I'm just trying to get the structure here. It's not so much a question, it's more of a trying to establish a flow here. The flow, as I said, begins with the impact of the higher transcendent levels. That's before the Tzimtzum Keser Klali of Tehilah to Tata. Then he goes to the effect of Keser of Atzilus on us. In other words, the Makif of Atzilus impacts us, the thoughts of Shuva, the hidden love, and so on. Then he went and said, now let's understand the next level. So the next thing you think he's going to say, okay, we finished with Keser of Atzilus. Let's now do Keser of Bria, Yotzer, Keser of Asiyah.
Keser of Atzilus is saying that that's Ak.
He said, no, it's not Ak. No. He said it clearly. That's for sure. 3 different impacts. So you think the next thing is Keser of Bria, Yotzer, Keser Asiyah. Instead, he goes into the whole discussion of Baruch Sh'amar and Birchus Yotzer, and goes now in and adds Makif of Yechida and Makif of Chaya before he gets to Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, which is Bria, Yotzer, Asiyah. In other words, he's throwing in here new Makifim. So I'm wondering where they fit here. If you go in the order, you go Tehirah, Tehirah Tata, Ak, Keser Vatzilus, that's Ak, Keser Vatzilus, Keser Bria, Yotzer, Asiyah. Here, suddenly there's a discussion of 2 impacts on Malchus, both in Atzilus. One is the impact of Keser Malchus, one is Bina in Malchus. So it could be, that's the gradation as I just said. That in chapter 67 he's talking about Keser of Atzilus. Then he talks about Keser of Atzilus, how it impacts Malchus in chapter 74. And then in chapter 75 and on, he talks about how Bina impacts Malchus. It could be that's the way it goes. And then he moves on to the Bria, Yotzer, Asiyah. That may also be possible. Or we can say that this level of Keser, what he speaks in chapter 74, is the same idea that he speaks about in chapter 67, which is the Keser Malchus. I just was pointing out in chapter 77 he uses awfully similar language as he used in chapter 64, saying that it affects the Hurei Tshuva. That's what got me. He says it affects that you should have thoughts of Tshuva. What's the effect? That's Bina affecting Malchus. In chapter 64, he said that is Keser of Atzilus affecting Malchus. That's why I'm thinking that maybe the way to explain it is that Keser of Atzilus that he spoke earlier affects us through the thoughts of Shuva, the love and hidden love. If you break it down more specifically, it's Keser of Atzilus, Keser Malchus, which is Chayav, Makif of Yechida. Then Makif of Chaya is the Bina impact on Malchus, like he spoke the 2 impacts. It matures Malchus. Number 1, it causes us to want to leave our distance and lonely state and elevate us from that dark place, like whether the hunger and thirst of the animal, divine soul, or the animal soul. And the second thing, it makes Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim and Avodah, a passionate and revealed conscious service instead of how it's all year round, where it's passive or quiet under the surface, dormant. So that could be 2 details in the effect of Keser of Atzilus. One is how Keser of Atzilus affects Malchus, one how Bina of Atzilus affects Malchus. And then he moves on to the end of chapter 77, which we just learned, the 3 impacts that come afterwards, which to sum up is that there are three types of souls. There are souls that connect, primarily their service is one of neshama, of nefesh, action-oriented, asiyah. It's not with their mind and not with emotions. And even the asiyah doesn't need the kavanah, they just do what's told to do. Grinders. Then you have the neshomas of ruach. They work already with emotions and feelings that are even more powerful when they're also informed by intelligence. But it's still an intelligence, it's still a contemplation that connects to emotions. So it's called chitzenius mechen, as he called it, the art of an outer dimension of intelligence. And then there's neshomas, chitzenius mechen. Then there's neshomas of neshama, the third level of bria, and they're atzmus mechen. And there, the midas, emotions are just an inevitable result, a product of intelligence. Instead of it being the primary service, it's the primary service is with the mind. And he said that those are the three levels of neshamas. And the last parentheses, he explained that even though it said that mechen of bria is for midas, so he said a beautiful concept here, a chiddush between malachim and neshamas, that for souls, bria is already mechen also. And what is atzilus? Atzilus is like chachma. So basically, bina is the level of bria is the level of bina, and for malachim it is intelligence that relates to emotions, and for the souls, it's intelligence alone. And atzilus is higher than that. Atzilus is like super rational aved. Essentially, without spelling it out, it appears that these three makifim, we say tsur, mogin, and mizgav, are the makifim. In other words, these three transcendent levels give power to these three types of aveda. So to sum it up, I'm sure going to continue on to sum it up. Transcendence impacts our lives. The general makifim impact our lives through fundamental principles like mesiras nefesh and the deep faith and stuff like that, and the physical ability to give our bodies also, fasting and so on. Atzilus impacts, as we said, the thoughts of Shuva, the ahava misoteres, rusa de liba, the desire of the heart and so on. And then the makifim pratim of each world give strength and power to that particular sort of service. So those that serve with the mind get a power from transcendence through the makif of tsur. Those souls that serve with emotions get the power of transcendence from the makif kesed of yitzira. That's mizgav, mogin yeshenu. And the third, the souls that work primarily in action, get power and get additional strength from the transcendence and the kesed of asiyah, which is mizgav ba'adenu. But either one, this is all not imminent. This is not the abilities that we have from Er Pnimi, from the powers that exist within the structure. This is something beyond the structure, helping us elevate that as we are within the existence. So, no matter it is, it's always transcendence. Now he's going to continue and speak about this further in Aveda. He's going to say it's three levels of teshuvah. So the beauty here is, if you really think about it, you bring the haskalah that he spoke earlier, as I said. He spoke the deeper levels, how it is in Lefnei Tzimtzum, the levels of Atzmus, how it becomes Ein Sof, the field of energy, and then the Rotzen, the desire for existence, and then Shir Atzmi B'Keach, the envisioning of the structure of existence. So what it comes down to, each of these elements here, with giving the tools of how we retrace the steps. This is the Aveda that's required. So he's speaking obviously in the microcosm here, Malchus of Atzilus, and the worlds below. But the same thing you can apply, that when a person, for example, serves with action, and the makif affects, you are essentially connecting to the makif of asiyah the klolos. And the same thing is with each of the levels. This is the Aveda, the instruments, the tools, to connect to that dimension. And so it goes both ways. That dimension gives us strength, and in turn we reconnect to that dimension through our service. So you have the interface at work here. Okay? Clear? Just want to put it into context, the whole thing, because all these discussions at the end of the day is about us connecting with that level. So chapters 78, page 146. Let's see. Friedrich Rebbe, in the summary of the beginning of this discourse, says, primi bischalkus makiv bli gvul. It's interesting. It's really the summary at the end of the Maimon, not the beginning of the Maimon. Okay. So here we go. Chapter 78. And just as these three levels are distinguished in their service, meaning those that serve with maisa, in action-oriented, those that serve with emotions, emotional-oriented, those that serve with intellect, mind-oriented, same thing, so just like the aveda is distinguished, there's also a distinction, a difference between the levels of teshuvah in the three levels of nefesh, ruach, neshomo. Actually, naran, you could also say neshomo, ruach, nefesh. By the way, just completely aside, remember back then we learned about ban. We said that odin is the same ban with teshuivah. The 9 letters is the 9 letters of Shem Ban's milui. I don't know if I mentioned it then, but okay, ban, because ban is Yud, it's 3 letters, Yud Vav Daled. K is Hey Aleph, Vav Vav Vav, and Hey Aleph. So there you go, 2, 4, 6, 9. So that's the gematria of Odin is the Shem Ban 52 plus 9. And ban. For the 9 letters. Yeah, but it's hey. It could be it's hey. 10, 10, 20, 40. Yeah, 40. Yeah. Yeah, it is hey. But it's bottom line. It's 9 letters. Fine. So now he says the same thing is here. Gimel Madregas. If nefesh naran is usually nefesh ruach neshama, but the order he's been going, actually he has been going the order of nefesh ruach neshama. I'm sorry. Strike that. So it's basically just as they're distinguished in Aveda, they're also distinguished. There's also the levels of teshuvah of these 3 levels. What does this mean? Teshuvah de b'chinas nefesh. There's going to be teshuvah de b'chinas ruach and teshuvah b'chinas neshama. Remember, this is a Shabbos Shuva Maimer.
Yeah, how do they work it out? That should be exactly.
2 possibilities. One is that it's mechovim al maila. And secondly, he may have added this later. It could be. I don't know. This we have to look in the ksisveyad. But regardless, it fits. So what are the 3 levels? Tshuva de b'chinas nefesh kumeshakosov hanefesh hachatas. It says hanefesh hachatas. The nefesh that sins. V'hatshuva shemadregas neshev toshav b'tshuva. And what's the tshuva? That the level of nefesh, when you say nefesh chatas, it's not just soul in general, it means the level of nefesh. He's bringing here first proofs that there's 3 types of teshuvahs, 3 levels. The second is v'teshuvah de b'chinas ruach, the teshuvah of level of ruach. There we go. There we have the ruach. Spirit returns to Elokim. V'teshuvah de b'chinas neshama. And the third is teshuvah on the level of neshama. Ruchi v'nishmasi elov yasif. So you have there now ruach v'nishmasi elov yasif gathers to him. It usually refers to the end of life. By Yasif, when he gathers the energy. For Inyan and the Inyan in this is the 3 levels is like this. Now, because the nefesh is the level of asiya, action, as we discussed earlier, previous chapter. So how does it manifest in Shuva? This aveda of nefesh, that the Shuva is in action related. And what's action related? Surmara, refraining from evil, and asay teiv, doing good. The Peel Mamish, action based. What does this mean? When he's very embittered and pained in his soul, in his nefesh, on the sin and the transgression, and he's very fakvetz from it. He's very constricted. It's like he feels anguish. Feels. Mitzar here is not tsar from tsar as in pain. Tsar is more meitzar. Feels pressured by it, crushed by it. confined by it. And a very strong determination is established by him in his heart. To leave behind the paths of evil. Laziv kol darki rosha. And to reject, or laziv also means to leave. Abandon. Okay, abandon all the ways of the wicked. It says Yazav Rosha Darke. Rosha leaves his wicked path. A wicked person leaves his path, to be more precise. This is called abandoning the sin in action. No, we're not talking here about whether you changed the causes and the roots of what brought you to sin, your passions, your desires, and so on. Peil mamish, she made this decision. L'shana is d'rachav hakedmim mahepech alahepech, to change his previous ways, his previous paths, from one extreme to the next, from one opposite to the other opposite. The kashameriris nafshi hu be'emes, when this bitterness of his soul is true, shemischaret ala over, when he does it in a truthful way and he regrets the past, on the past, then the resolution, HaKabbalah, the acceptance, the determination, the resolution is also true, and it completely changes his ways. In other words, by determining, in action, and he's in pain by his past, and he does it with sincerity, then also he actually will, the positive, the forward future would also be one that's with sincerity and truthful. No, it's not faking it, not fooling himself. And same thing is with the teshuvah in general, in overpowering the crassness of one's life, even in the things that are permitted. We talk about there are things that are not permitted, and there are things permitted, but you also indulge. And what's the lashon is? Teshivah shel ther. It's called Malchus, or things that are permitted. They're not forbidden per se, but it's an indulgence. It's indulging in it. So here too, we're talking teshuvah also on that. Achum is b'chlal. The people just vergrept in general. Till now he was talking actually about things that were inappropriate. Ched v'oven. He was talking even dvarim mutarim. No, not on a sin or a transgression, God forbid, in action. No, we're not talking about a particular thing you did which was not permitted. So you left that behind. He's talking now He's talking now the general inclination of a person, that he follows his animal soul. And he's attached to it, he's addicted to it. He cannot separate himself from the animal's soul's desires. Not talking here, in other words, a specific sin, God forbid. He's talking to the general chumris. A person licked in gashmis, so chumris. That's what his immersion is in. The material, the cross, the crass. That's because his nefesh again, this lower level, is mekusher made, is very attached, very connected, very dependent on mekusher binyanim achumrim, in these coarse or crass items. That's because he's so connected, he cannot separate from it. Anybody ever has such issues? Ken sich nicht absagen davon. Heißt? Ken sich nicht absagen davon. I thought he was going to say upreißen. It says absagen. He cannot decline from it. He can't say no. Someone says, it's not the nefesh Rabbi says, let's do something interesting. He can't say no.
He's a gentleman.
Yeah. So this is always going further. In other words, this teshuvah nefesh is also dealing not just with action. It's also dealing with the general immersion, the general involvement in the animal soul's activities. By day, and through the embitterment or the sadness of this, on this, Hariyupel Yeshua's benafshe. He causes salvations, redemptions to his nefesh. That it should not be so bound. That's the word. With these coarse, crass things. And should not be drawn to follow and incline toward his nature, this nature. And he should change his ways in this. In other words, it's the meridus. It's feeling sad about it, which helps break the addiction, which helps break the hold, the hypnosis. If you feel comfortable, obviously, you're not going to go anywhere. It has to be, that's, he explains, we're talking about teshuvah and nefesh. We're not just talking about the nefesh involved in it, teshuvah and nefesh. So you see, the same idea he spoke before. In general, nefesh is aved and maisa. He's now speaking how that manifests in teshuvah concept. Ukamoikein hateshuvah al lowedr. It's all still nefesh. The same thing is teshuvah al lowedr kabbalah sel Malchus shamayim. They're also doing teshuvah on the fact that you did not have, you were not subjugated, you were not loyal, dedicated. Ubafrat kisheyesh prikasel she'ein pachad elikim alov. And especially, there's one thing not having kabbalah sel, then there's also having prikasel. Oil, of course, means yoke. Kabbalah sel means accepting the yoke, meaning the dedication to it. Prika means to throw off, like you unload. Prika means, so literally prika means to just simply throw off the load, throw off your commitment, like someone quitting the job. She'ein pachad elikim alav. The fear of God is not upon him. Shesorach li teshuvah al zeh. You need to have teshuvah on this. Ulhamshich alav el Malchus shamayim. And to draw upon himself the oil, the yoke of heaven. All this is in general, Bichlal is all encompassed, is all included in the first teshuvah, the level of nefesh. The teshuvah, the b'chinas ruach, now the second teshuvah, the teshuvah in the level of ruach, hu teshuvah al lowedr hispaalus ahava yirah. So just like he spoke before, ruach is daved with ahava yirah. Now he's not talking any more action, or even our immersion in the animal soul and kabbalah and prikasel, etc. Now he's talking. What's lacking is the lack of an awakening of love and awe. I just have to qualify. Remember, most Jews would be pretty satisfied with the first level because we're action oriented, and first you have to have a taste of love and awe of God before you have a lack of it, right? So the question is, loving and ahava and yirah are far more complicated and higher level than just action. When a person does a mitzvah, clearly you see from here, this doesn't mean he has ahava yirah. You can just do it out of kabbalah sel. You do it because you fear God, but not that you've developed a love and a sense of relationship with the Eibishter. Remember, emotions means relationship. Maisa is also a relationship technically, but it's more a relationship of, like we say, a master, like you said, like an eved, vidus eved. So now he's talking about the teshuvah and the awakening of love and awe. Shar yesh chiyuv, here goes. Shar yesh chiyuv al kol echad ve'echad is qualifying right away. Someone will say, 1 second, who says we need to have that? So shar yesh chiyuv, there's a responsibility al kol echad ve'echad, and every person liyaseseiris ahava yirah. This is a good line to underline. Klar. Responsibility, a chiyuv. Obligation. Yeah, but pashtus, yeah. And al-tiras Hashem, yeah. To be a seder, to have an awakening of love and awe. Shazel mitzvah and mitzvah satera. Shem kuchuyev kol echad v'echad miYisroel. It almost looks like he's speaking to someone who's wondering what he needs chassidus for. There's a mitzvah from the mitzvah satera. Just like the action that he spoke before, mitzvah is a mitzvah satera, that every Jew is responsible for and obligated in. And additionally, besides that it's a mitzvah, there's also it has something, it achieves something. It's interesting. V'gam shai dezeh. No, it's a mitzvah. Kedem kol.
Then there's a result.
And it's also through this is birur v'tikkun nefesh habamis. This is how you refine and you repair the animal soul. Remember, in action, it's more behavioral therapy. You change your behavior. Instead of bad behavior, you're going good. But I said before, that doesn't mean you're affecting you're not working necessarily what you should desire, what you shouldn't desire. You're embittered, they're sad about your choices, about your actions, about your general immersion in materialism and in crassness and so on. Here, we're talking about working and actually refining birur v'tikkun nefesh habamis.
Sounds like not the goal, but just a byproduct. The gam.
No, gam just means in addition to being a mitzvah. He's talking about here another level of teshuvah. The question is, why do you need this level of teshuvah? So first of all, he says because it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to love, and ahava yirah is a mitzvah. So if you don't have it, it's a mitzvah to awaken and you love and awe. If you don't have it, you need to do teshuvah. Then he says v'gam, the benefit of this, or he doesn't say the word benefit, v'gam, it does something for you. In other words, both is another additional reason. Because if you don't do it, your nefesh habamis is not being refined and not being elevated, not being repaired.
It's interesting, it doesn't mention the essential goal of Ayin Beis is to do toward mitzvahs.
First of all, who said that? Tanya. You just throw out such a line. Tanya can't. Hold on. V'havtas Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah of its own. Doesn't need to be a means to something.
But he says it's a mocker.
One second. With all due respect, a mocker doesn't mean that's its purpose. It happens to be also a mocker. That's what it means. You could say the opposite. That whole Torah mitzvah is in order to bring ahava.
Okay, but if it's going to mention a byproduct, what I'm saying, if it's going to mention the byproduct of chicken nefesh.
But it's not a byproduct. I just told you. I'm telling you, it's not a byproduct. You didn't say that. I negated what you said. You said v'gam means byproduct. I'm telling you, it's not byproduct. You're responding to you, not to me.
Let me finish the question. But you'd also mention that if it's going to mention achievements, it should mention also.
Who says? It's not a list of. It's not a list of achievements. This is an explanation of teshuvah. There's a second level of teshuvah, not an action. Teshuvah. So first, if there's no mitzvah to love and awe, there's no reason to have teshuvah. If it's not a requirement, so you won't go there. You'll have teshuvah and ma'aseh. Everyone understands. So the first thing establishes it's a mitzvah. The second thing he's saying is that this ahava yirah refines and repairs the nefesh habamis.
It's a mitzvah, but it's an essential mitzvah.
Exactly.
That's exactly what he's trying to say.
Exactly.
What he's emphasizing is a teshuvah part of it.
He's saying don't think it's just a regular.
It's not emphasizing.
What is missing?
That there's a sooner answer token inside the yirah of mitzvahs. It's something to tell you have to have a mitzvah. You're missing mitzvahs. Missing yirah. But it's also telling you the teshuvah part is that it actually fixes what should be corrected. And that's why it's coming.
No. Even if he didn't say the gam, you need teshuvah because it's a mitzvah. It's very simple. It's very simple. I don't know what the complication here is. He's talking about the second level of teshuvah.
The person has a lack of ahava yirah, that means he hasn't done the mitzvah of ahava yirah. Right?
That's the first thing. That's the first thing that he
needs to repair that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but is there a question on the table?
Not anymore, not by me.
Okay, good. So v'gam shai dezeh birur v'tikkun nefesh habamis, and also through ahava and yirah, you refine and repair the animal soul. Shal zehu tachlis yiridaseh. Now he goes even deeper. Because of this is the purpose of its descent lamata down below l'zachas nefesh habamis shalakach netzer. So by fulfilling ahava v'yirah, you're actually fulfilling the ultimate purpose of your soul coming down to earth, which is to refine the animal soul for l'kach netzer. For that, this is why we were created.
So it's not some side mitzvah from
Exactly, that's fundamental. And without that, you don't have refinement of the animal soul, basically with ruach. And in order for that, the animal soul should have a tzir pnimi. I never saw that expression. A tzir pnimi meaning sheyir b'chinas adam zayin a mensch pashut, right? That the nefesh habamis shouldn't just be this wild animal, wild beast, untamed, but it should be a tzir pnimi. It should be a type of internal tzir pnimi. It's an interesting expression here. An internalized Tzir here means not just image. Tzir means that it should be. Tzir. No. I don't mean the primi part. I'm talking about the tzir part. Tzir primi means like as when you said a chosdas at tzir.
It should take on the shape
of a human. It should look like a human. It should take on right. It should shape himself up. Shape up. Should begins Adam to be in a state of Adam of a human. So when you do teshuvah, when you do the in of nefesh, your action, you're having your animal soul not disturbed and you're behaving right. But if you want it to be a mensch, if you want the human being to be a mensch through and through, this is not possible without awakening of love and awe. He's explaining why this is such a fundamental mitzvah. Which is revealed in his heart, that comes specifically through contemplation. In other words, you're talking now of Veda Primis already. Right. Not just nefesh, not just action. Do it. I remember I spoke yesterday about children. A young child you can't expect ruach from. You can expect nefesh. You teach them good habits. But then comes a point you want the refinement. You want a person not to be a grubber young. You want them to be a refined human being internally. And that's not possible without ahava yirah, basically. So you can expect from someone, you can basically say, you know what, I'll tie my hands, I'll close my eyes, I won't do anything bad. But you haven't changed anything. All you've done is you've basically tied up the animal. He's talking now about refining the animal and turning it into harnessing it into a.
A person follows his animalistic basic instincts. He doesn't have a tzir.
Right.
He also weakens the nefesh. We don't change it. So that's why it's tzir optimum.
Because the kfiyah, the imposition, chnos we said achno means the submission. The breaking down of. It's like breaking its resistance, causing it to. There's a word achno. It's subjugation, to subjugate. The animal soul you could be also without ahava yirah. For koshkin b'lei ahava yirah b'ay days bonus, and definitely not through a love and awe and respect that comes through contemplation. How? By the sheer power, sheer intensity of the nefesh to dominate. It's essentially like forcing it. I don't think there's a level of bas. We'll still see. And through this also, by sheer dominance, you also create the weakness of the animal soul. Both the lack of doing anything that's coarse and crash, because by dominating you weaken through this the nature of the crassness. It's like whipping. Hitting the ther, it should be that it's a ther.
By not using it, you lose it.
But I would say Ayin what? Through achno. No. But listen, let's start with Ayin Beis. Ayin Beis, what? Through achno of nefesh habamis. Through this you weaken nefesh habamis. Heimetzad heder apula. By declining or refraining from doing things that are crass. Through this itself, you weaken the teh of the chumrius, the nature of the crassness. Okay, you're saying by not indulging in it, that alone weakens it. Okay, fine. And even more so, through the actual.
What is that, That's just subjugation. In other words, if we keep it not like that, you keep it alone.
No, that's then you're breaking it even more by the kfiyah. One is by not doing it.
The kfiyah itself.
Well, in general, I mean, a lot of taivas, like habits, you don't feed it, they don't do it. But then there's the kfiyah where you actually. One is through a lack of refraining from action, and one is actually, beating them up, basically, like really working hard.
He's right, because technically, kfiyah means restraining yourself from doing it. That's how you kaif it.
No, so he's breaking it into more dakas, but dakas it's like two things. One is the actual refraining weakens it, and then there's the force that is causing you to refrain is
shipping you out.
Yeah. Refraining, for example, is just simply saying to yourself, I'm not going to do something. So it's coming from kfiyah. But by not doing it, that weakens it. And then there's the kfiyah itself, the root of it. This is all the ability to subjugate it without yirah. But through this, you don't engrave. It doesn't become an engraving and a tzir primi, an actual reshaping of the personality of the animal soul. That's the word I wanted. Rather, the only way to do that is the way to actually change the personality and to engrave it within the personality of the animal soul is through the love that comes through contemplation. Like he said in the previous chapter, there's ahava without contemplation. But contemplation, like when you see something very attractive, if you don't contemplate on it, it'll quickly dissipate. Contemplation creates a certain relationship with it also. So he's saying here also, so with the ahava, when there's ahava, with contemplation, nasit sir primi ba nefesh abamis, then it becomes an internalized, reshaped identity of the animal soul. Look, even in the 12-step program, when they deal with this, and they talk to, there's the first thing is I just surrender to a power that's beyond me. That's like simply, I've been broken by life. I've been broken by my addictions. I've seen how it's destroyed my life. I'm just using a strong example. And the first thing is I just recognize that. That already is that break creates it's really the opening. It's like the shvira. We said almost like we spoke before about helplessness. A yush. You come to a point where you got to do something. It's like I mentioned David Carr. When you hear, it just became obviously impossible. But that does not mean that you're not going to go back to it, because all you did was got scared, living dilates out of you. So you're woken up. It's a wake-up call. To really change, you have to actually work with your nefesh abamis and do something with it, or else it's going to go back to, it's going to get hungry and thirsty, and it'll forget everything that inspired it. So ahava, yirah, is working and actually changing that personality. This is still not neshomo. This is ruach. This is real aveda. This is called aveda. This is aveda. I mean, it's really an excellent chapter for avedic chapter as a good. See, the word chikika is interesting, engraved. As we know, when you write something on a piece of paper, yes, it's connected. But you could ultimately erase it. It's two different items. The ink or the pencil and the paper are two different entities. When you engrave something, it's part of the thing itself. It's through and through. Now, of course, in the neshama is engraved already, ahava misoteres, but we're talking obviously on a conscious level. The animal soul, it's not engraved. The animal soul on its own, it's on its own, it's untamed. Okay. Because through contemplation, meditation, the natural seichel, we're not talking about the divine, the natural seichel, this natural seichel also appreciates and understands the divine item or inyan matter.
That's how you engrave it.
Yeah. And additionally, primarily is because the awakening, the arousal of the love, the divine soul. I guess he means because of the hisbonenus. In other words, that's what he's saying right now. So the love in the divine soul, in other words, right now, remember, the divine and animal soul reside side by side. Yeah. So when it all depends on what occupies your life. If you're right now, your machshava dibur ma'aseh, your thought, speech, and action are occupied with something that's holy, and there's a desire, and this mizbonus shows you the beauty of something, and the animal soul and the divine soul is awakened. Also, the animal soul is impacted by it in a love to godliness. In different places explains this can be because of its own interest. It sees the benefit of it. It says whatever, but it doesn't matter. And through the lack of this awakening, arousal of love and respect, he's in pain. His soul is pained. Because the purpose of his reason of his descent below is not being realized. Who is that? the nefesh habamis purpose or the nefesh alakis? It's mashma the nefesh habamis. Because you said before, shalakach netzer, yeah. I'm going to be a bit tikkun of now, tachlis yidasi of nefesh. Ah, that's it. Okay, nefesh. The level of the nefesh is pain by it. Okay. Could be either one.
When it says b'chalal neshomo zuyid, that is the whole thing. Should have an aliyah.
It's usually the nefesh alakis. That's the nefesh alakis.
The nefesh alakis is there to give power to the nefesh, to elevate the nefesh bahamas. It doesn't need tikkun by itself, doesn't it say that?
Yeah, but what doesn't need tikkun itself? The nefesh alakis doesn't need. Right.
Really, so we're really talking about
the lowedr guva nefesh habamis, correct? But the nefesh alakis comes down.
Who's in pain?
Yeah, no, but 1 second. That's one place. Then it says sometimes that it is usually the tzedek aliyah. That also the. Yeah, the Rebbe brings. There's two reasons why that sometimes you say it's not for the neshoma itself; it's for the yirah of the welt or the nefesh habamis. Sometimes you say it's also for the neshoma itself.
Ultimately, like you will have also.
That's one way, and there's other place that says it's the chatchila for the neshoma itself, because the neshoma cannot really live up to its real potential without that fight. It's two different biyurim, huh?
It's not a malchus.
Yeah, right. And not as an aside. As the chatchil the kavan. It's in Chelik Chof. The Rebbe speaks about the two reasons for creation: legal shlemus kechesov, and dira b'tachtenim. So dira b'tachtenim, he says, is for the birur nefesh habamis, and shlemus kechesov is to reveal the power. Ultimately, dira b'tachtenim is the ultimate purpose. So yes, it's correct. Yeah, the neshama, the bottom line is birur. But it's just yeah. Anyway, so this is so.
No, but it says the shabbos knuzes with tachas and all of that, right? That's talking about nefesh alakis. It's talking about nefesh bahamis.
No, that's the nefesh alakis. Because in the time in the beginning, he says nefesh habamis comes from this hecholus of klippa. It's the nefesh alakis that comes from the high levels that we usually talk about. Shamash and Satabi Tahiri. These are all nefesh.
Nefesh bahamis is not not giving submissive. You could use it.
Klippa snega. Yeah, but the nefesh habamis usually comes from tehu. The nefesh alakis comes from atzilus. So generally speaking, we speak about the high levels, the shama going to Ganei, you're talking now about nefesh alakis. Look, it's complicated to understand when they join, when do they, what stage, etc. But it's zemal umaz that. Yeah. And some of it's even higher than nefesh. It's the root of the nefesh alakis. Anyway, Val Hedish said is he has tsar because the purpose is not being fulfilled. So he's adding a whole bunch of reasons here how ahava yirah is critical. First, it's a mitzvah. Second, it is the key to making a tzir pnimi, to refining the nefesh habamis. And 3, is the purpose. The whole purpose of it, of coming down here, is for this reason. So don't do ahava yirah, you're lacking the purpose. Yeah, you're doing action, but you're not fulfilling the purpose of the descent. Okay. And I was going further, and specifically and particularly because the reason he's going further and explaining why ahava yirah is such a critical component in the whole Aveda. Okay, here's whenever you ask me, like, what do you need it for? Here you got all the answers are here. It's like a whole list. This to me is Askola, and that to me is Aveda. I don't have two worlds. I don't see Chassidus as Askola and Aveda. To me, that is very disturbing, the concept even, because it's all one thing. All the levels are there for us to work with it. But pale means the b'stak b'as seichel means it's only because someone takes seichel seriously that there's a distinction between ein ed malvade. The Ebershter he wants to manifest in seichel, midas, mashke. Verstehst du, was kommt davor? It's easier to learn it than to daven. I didn't say it's not, but that's because of laziness. No, but that's not because I beshita. Yeah, no, but because laziness. Listen, I never. Okay, that's mainstream. No, but good. But I'm not going to make a philosophy out of my laziness. Understand? That does not matter. Listen, as you learn this, you get more avitit. As you get more avitit, there's a tayvet tzaka. It's time to build a tayvet daven, a good parsha, and then really see what it does. The problem is they never taught us how to daven. Davening is a lost art. You understand? Learning doesn't take. If you have a little mind, you learn, you figure it out. I'm not saying it's easy.
When you were younger, you saw it. You saw it.
I saw it, but they were like on the mountain. That there was for me like a fairy tale. They didn't relate to them. These were people who were not in touch with us. They didn't go to pizza shops and ice cream stores. Rabbi Nissen? Well, I saw, but I didn't. I mean, listen, I'm not. I know. But I also went like this. When you're a bachar, there's the first early stages. You could be an Ayin Beis and the man comes down and like when you're 16 years old, they convince you. Then you get a little, you say, Ayin Beis. And then you more or less remain that cynic. And maybe when you turn 50, 60, you start changing this. But very few lose that cynicism. I guess Shlem Chaim infused it in Bachrim. But here was different. The Rebbe being here, the Giluyim at that level, there was a lot of no one taught. We didn't have in yeshiva a guy that sat with us like a mother or father, like a mentor, that you could identify with, that you loved, that would inspire. That would be the way. That's the only way. No way. There's no way that someone just going to look through this and chazer that's in davening. You need an example. You need a coach. Exactly, 100%. So learning, you have a mind. You have a chush v'chsidus. You pick it up. You listen, so on. It's much easier in a way. Davening is an art. I'm 100%. If I had any say, it would be one of the first things. What do you think davening means? By the way, it's also misunderstood what it means. We think it means sitting with a siddur and reading words. That's the technical part of it. I'm not saying it's not that. Davening is aveda shebelev. Eizu tefillah aveda shebelev. We don't learn anything about aveda shebelev. Ba'asab is a concept to work with your heart. The best you learn, it says, push your mind to understand something you don't understand. Since when did anyone push your emotions to go beyond what they want to do? No one ever even told us this. I mean, we read it in the books. Fight your nefesh abamis. Nefesh abamis means fighting your tithers. That's more or less what you're taught. Don't eat ice cream or don't eat candies. Primis de kaveda. There's plenty to do, and it would be a great blessing. Look, to me, aveda doesn't begin. You have to be in Zal, a bocher in Temchet Mim, 25 years old for aveda. You think a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old? Of course, you teach a child aveda from the youngest age. To me, someone said to me, I want to write an article. I don't know if I'll have time before Rosh Hashanah, but I want to write it because I had this epiphany. Someone said to me, I don't know, it just came to me 2 weeks ago. Someone said, "What would you suggest I do with my children? What's the best thing I could do?" So I said, "Best thing, every morning and every night, besides the tefillahs that you just say, tell your child that Hashem chose his soul or her soul to come to this earth, and that an indispensable mission. Not one day you shouldn't tell this to your child. Every day of his life. Trust me. You say this to your child every morning and every night by Moedani and Miyotchav, that child will forever be a different child. We pick it up, but I'm talking about hearing it from your parent and saying, I believe in you, and you have the keiches. I'm talking about from 2 years old, from 1 year old, from baby even. To me, that's aveda. Because then a person like that is always thinking, am I fulfilling my aveda? Because remember, if you're not driven, someone says, why should I even daven? Why should I daven in the first place? I have no time. Because it says in the Torah to daven. Davening, like he's saying here, it makes you a mensch. It's becoming a tzir adam. Tzir adam requires working yourself. Why would you work yourself? Because he says the whole thing came down for this reason. I mean, this is how I would apply this. I think it would tremendous. A simple thing like that. I remember every time the Rebbe would say Moedani to the children and say these things, you could see he didn't just say the words. It was like the meaning. Moedani, neshama. Talk to your child every day about his and her soul. Tell me something. Would that not one of the most preemptive medicines for no cost? You'd prevent most problems. 100%. I'm not saying everything is solved automatically. Conscious that parents pay attention and make it their time to do so. I see good parents. We don't do it. In our minds maybe we do it here and there. Once in a while we have a conversation. I would do this it would become mandatory. Because children are natural neshomas. They're naturally dedicated. They're naturally committed. They're good people. They don't have all the shtusim that we have. And what happens? They're going to enter a world of shtusim. That's inevitable. So the more you reinforce their neshama confidence, so to speak, the more they have tools to fight. Simple as that. If not, they succumb. 100%. I mean, they know that they're very good parents that know how to speak to their child, and they help a child work through things. And like when a child comes home from school, something went wrong, a way to communicate. I'm not saying there aren't, but the more the merrier. I think today, this has to be like overload. As many times as you speak to your child about neshama, couldn't be enough. Because we know, can have plenty of challenges from the other side. So it was not priority, I don't know. It's like learning how to ski. You got to learn when you're young. Once you develop bad habits, once you have an attitude to davening that you got to get over with it, and it's 15 minutes, let me knock it off. It's very hard to rewire. That's why that davening more or less.
But isn't school, like, I don't see that school at all. What they bring home is davening is
but the teachers are like, what do you mean? But the teachers are the problem just as much as the students. No one knows how to look at it. Either we get these guys that talk about Aveda, Zitz and Daven Drai Shah, it doesn't relate to you. Or you don't talk about it altogether. Okay, fine. But even when they were around, they didn't speak to, you have to, it's like, teaching people how to emote, it's a really deeply psychological approach to life. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
What was he? What did you say?
You saw a man davening Hashem Kippur, from the previous generation.
And he wasn't necessarily the biggest Baal Madrega, but it came Hashem Kippur.
I know who he was.
Okay. And now he's going further to explain why ahava yirah is so important. Because the reason for what? I guess the reason for all the problems is because the dominance of the animal soul that causes timtum alev. How do we define timtum? Blockage. The dulling of the heart. Yeah, the desensitization. The midas the nefesh alkis hein beisalmus ve'ena mispol me'in eliki. That the midas of the animals of the divine soul are concealed, and they're not excited about anything that's divine. The befrat goes on when he's mizbeinin, that he's not fulfilling his purpose, he has tsar, and specifically because he realizes that the power of the nefesh abamis is causing him this blockages, this desensitization, this stalling, that the midas are concealed and not excited about anything. So imagine, you see something that you know is divine, and you don't get excited about it. You're completely indifferent. You cry over the fact that you don't cry. Like the Rebbe said about people sleeping in the sukkah. Yeah. And he's deeply pained by this. Because in time, as time passes, you see how sad that is. As time passes, the lack of Aveda, what happens? The nefesh habam is the animal soul grows in power, intensifies in its strength. And the divine soul gets weaker. And who knows what this can possibly bring, God forbid. I think we should take a moment of silence. Wow. The husband's the Rebbe Zogda. That's something to think about. And now this comes the teshuvah of the ruach toshuv. Ruach. The teshuvah of the ruach, the spirit returns lias hispaalus amidus. To get excited, to get animated. Midas. For teshuvah b'madrega zu he be hispaalus b'nefesh yeshem teshuvah deprivation nefesh. And the teshuvah on this level is more excited, hispaalus nefesh b'nefesh, more excitement than stimulation in the soul more than the first teshuvah at the level of nefesh. In other words, the teshuvah itself is in a form of emotion. Not just it's a teshuvah about your emotion, the teshuvah itself is more emotional.
Emotionally charged.
Yes. The nefesh, and even though the teshuvah in the level of nefesh is on action-oriented things, and also, as he said, on the dominance of the crassness, this is also an action. His actions are like the actions of a behemoth. Oh, he spells it out beferish here. And especially with prikasel, complete rejecting any responsibility and commitment. It's the murur of all ra, all types of evil, God forbid. Like it says elsewhere. So he's asking a question. Agam shuv is an almaisa, but bevade kashe yara lov ruach ther v'yiser b'tshuva alzeh. And definitely when a pure spirit from above, hovers over him, yirah, wakes him up, v'yiser b'tshuva, and he gets awakened with tshuva alzeh. Negele inyanim b'pnimis nafshei mamish. It touches and reaches into him in the deepest parts of his soul. More than the lack of the serving that's lacking the arousal of love and respect. So it's a question here. He said that the teshuvah of ruach is deeper, more emotional, more passionate. But the fact is, teshuvah nefesh, when you do it in action, when you really do it, it touches you very deeply, more than the lack of ahava yirah, because here you're dealing with the real crassness of the world.
It's pretty good. You're about
I guess it bothers you more because it's more animalistic. Where there, it's a more the mekom mokim zeh bedakis says shara kaponim einam evnech. Zeh, he's meaning ruach now, because ruach, at the end of the day, you're dealing with a much more subtler problem.
So part of the question.
Yeah, it's a subtler problem because you're dealing the lack of internal aved. Shara kaponim einam evnech aved, because at least he's not navir aved. Ve'ena nechshek behem rak she'ein adam. That's good. He's not from the Eved Aveda. The first one, you're talking about action-oriented, so it's more or less, you're behaving like a behemoth. Either it's a real Aveda, or it's the true of a behemoth, because you're involved in crassness. Whereas in Ruach, when you're dealing with emotion, the whole thing is on a much more subtle level. The only thing, he's not called a behemoth, the only thing he's not, that's yirah. No, because you're controlling the actions in nefesh. However, you're still not a mensch. It's just a mensch is a zichanish. It's a nice expression, huh? Yeah. Nevertheless, this is the answer. Nevertheless, the teshuvah of ruach is still more exciting, more excitable, more passionate than the teshuvah of nefesh. Liyas the mishu rak b'chinas nefesh ein ba'in hispaalus b'nafshei kol kach. Being, because a person who's doing teshuvah in the nefesh on the level of action, he's not in the level, he's not working with the dimension of emotions, with excitement so much. So even though the teshuvah is an awakening from within, the essence of his soul, and he's really disturbed by his behavior, because the inyanim are really touching him. He's talking about nefesh, the lower teshuvah. Internally, but in the depths, in the inner kishkis of his soul, inner recesses, to the point that he changes all his ways and his paths. Nevertheless, doesn't have in it so much excitement and passion, because he's not on the level of passion. He's working more with action based. So yes, it's a deeper disturbance to him, because there he's working on a more subtler thing, but it's not necessarily such a passionate type of teshuvah. The eina kavana, he's saying now in parentheses, eina kavana she'ein b'zeh hispaalus klal. He's saying kol kach. We're not saying a kavana doesn't have any hispaalus, any excitement. Because every level encompasses all the other levels. Kol, so it also has ruach. Nefesh also has ruach in it. But the excitement is not so intense.
Are we saying the bitterness that one feels?
One second. Let me finish reading. We'll see. Ubederach klal, Hatshuvah hi sheshayach lasi bepel mamash levad. And in general, this teshuvah is shayach, is related to only to action. Laziv darkei kedemes, to what did we say? Laziv to abandon, forsake, abandon, to leave behind his past paths. Ulashanes drachim, and change his ways, completely change his ways. Beheskem chazak made, with a very strong and resolute determination. But it's all in action related. Someone who's on the level of ruach has the nature of excitement within the soul. And the teshuvah is on the lack of the revelation of the divine faculties. He's saying it a little differently now, but that's all part of it, because he's not as Adam. Here he wants to be a tziyur Adam. Yeah, the animals, the divine soul shapes up the animal soul to being a personality, identity of a human being, not an animal. And that's why the teshuvah is with great excitement, with great emotion. Yeah.
Now the question is on the table, why is all talking about that? That has to be respected.
Yeah. But that is part of it. But remember, in the parentheses he said, because that's part of the Aved itself. But Aved is to have yirah, so the teshuvah too should be one that is. That's part of what makes you a parent. No, if you have. Oh, he's going to say that. Okay. Oh, didn't realize. Fine. Yeah, I will call it. And there's an advantage, a virtue to this, that the teshuvah is with excitement and passion. Like there's an advantage of the excitement of the desire of the heart over kabol sel malchus shamayim, which we actually discussed earlier. Kabol sel malchus shamayim. Remember, he said that one of the effects of bina on Malchus is that it makes kabol sel into a galus belibay. Even though the bittul, even though the bittul of kabbalah shel malchus shamayim is deeper, pnimi, more internalized, va'atzmi, and more essential. Commission is baraleh, like we discussed earlier. On top of page Kuf Mem Hey 145, and then he says a parenthesis. It's a long parenthesis. Okay. Ubem es heder ahava yirah, and in truth, the lack of love and respect, agamshi bedakus, even though it's in subtle, magim ezeh habegam lamayla yeser liyeser madreg gever yeser. He's not qualifying. Okay, so kabbalah sel malchus shamayim is, let's say, the nefesh of teshuvah of nefesh. You could say it's kabbalah sel malchus shamayim. So there, he doesn't have the advantage of the excitement that comes of rusa deliba and the ruach. Now he's going backwards again. Even though the bittul is deeper of Kabbalah Sel, and now he's qualifying, he's saying it's deeper, and before he said that it doesn't affect so much because it's more subtle, where here it's more, he says the truth is, even though it's more subtle, ruach, but the pagam, the damage, the pagam, the wound, the damage that it causes is lamayla yeser, it's higher, because it comes from a higher level. Because it says Adam is Eitz Asada. Adam is like a tree in the field. And like the fruits of a tree. The fruits that are on top of the tree, when they fall below, they fall more distant, far from the tree. The neshama is the same thing as with the tree of life of souls. Very poetic here, this whole pedic here. Mishub madregi geveya, someone who's on a higher level, his fall, God forbid, is further down. And therefore, someone who has from the virtues of his soul, he has the quality that he's capable of aveda of ahava yirah ruach, of love and respect and awe. So then when he's lacking it, he speaks specifically someone on that level, when he's lacking it, his distance is further, and he's capable of doing much worse things. God forbid. Interesting take here. Another example. Besides the fact that the chesem, I'll beg it to the Talmud Chacham, Ravav, a stain on the garment that's a more chashuv, a more distinct. Beged chashuv, I know beged chashuv.
And a much more.
What's the word? How do you translate chashuv? More valuable, more precious. A more, not just precious financially, more expensive, or more beautiful, more. So when you put a little stain on a beged chashuv, so that's like, in other words, in addition to the fact that you're talking about a beged, and by him the stain is worse, relatively, he knew all so it's not just the stain is more amplified because of this beged chashuv, but also he's able to fall, God forbid, potentially fall far greater in evil. And that's why he truthfully needs a deeper teshuvah. So this is a qualification to what he said before. So in addition to being more excitement in this teshuvah, even the dimension he said before, it doesn't bother him as much as the nefesh, because nefesh, you're dealing with real problems. This is much subtler. But he's saying on a subtle level, in some ways, it has worse problems. Subtler sins for a person who's capable is worse. Not just because the stain is more is a bigger stain, is a worse stain on a precious, on a valuable garment, but it actually causes the person to fall deeper. Bottom line, a great person who doesn't fulfill his potential has a bigger problem than someone who's not as great. So who's a greater person has a greater Yetzer Hara. Okay. Same expression, but now he's saying even further, right? Exactly. It's a continuation. And this is that the teshuvah of ruach, being that it's in the level of ruach, that's why the teshuvah is with much more passion, excitement. What?
Is a bitterness not called hispaalus?
Bitterness? What does bitterness have to do with this?
Bitterness is without the level of teshuvah of nefesh. That's a tremendous bitterness. It's not called hispaalus.
No, because in general, bitterness is more sadness over a situation.
I think the bitterness is before that brings them to the truth. Yeah. But the actual truth is not.
The actual teshuvah is much quieter. It's more of it's just stopping yourself from doing things. It doesn't have a whole excitability. Here you're dealing with that the whole aved is on a level of ahava and yirah. You're dealing with an emotional state. There it's not so emotional as an emotion. I mean, yeah. Listen, when someone runs from a fire, is that hispaalus? I wouldn't call that hispaalus. That's running from danger. Hispaalus is when you're not running from fire and you get excited by, or you, yeah. Especially if there is a chet, God forbid, then the teshuvah is with an intense passion.
It's not love. It's just like a.
He's saying this level of ruach, if there's also a chet, it makes it even more passionate. Because then you have both things. But now comes the third teshuvah. The teshuvah with the bechinas neshomo, and the teshuvah of the third level neshomo, is on the lack of divine contemplation and meditation. Divine comprehension and divine contemplation. Now we're talking hasoga, moichin. Here we go. This also is a responsibility, obligation of each one. Like in the general asik, working, toiling in Torah in general, and the asik working, toiling, especially in primis, the inner dimension of Torah. Like it says in the Geras occasion, in that beginning, that knowing the cosmic order, the way God created existence, is a great mitzvah rabba, a powerful v'nosa and exalted mitzvah. V'adrabba elal kulona, And on the contrary, it rises above all mitzvahs. Like it says, today you shall know. Know God your Father. And it brings you to a complete heart. And when you're lacking this, you need teshuvah. So the ruach is the mitzvah of ahava, the mitzvah of ahava yirah. And the primary element is the herigish b'meiche. Not just the pure contemplation, but the feeling, the sensation in your mind. Because even when you meditate, contemplate on a godly idea, the inyan is not necessarily felt in your mind. You can learn something, but it's not leitzich. It does not settle. It does not. It's not integrated in his mind. Und es wird nicht der Hert. Der Hert means doesn't really get it. Yeah. The einem is Paul b'meche. He doesn't get excited in his mind. Shuzem it's timtum hameach. Before it was timtum halev.
He understands it, but he doesn't.
Yeah, and this comes from timtum hameach, the desensitization, the dullness of the mind. V'yesh b'zeh kama chilukim madregas. In the parentheses, this has many different levels. In the state of how much it's not being settled by him or contained by him, and the feeling and the lack of excitement. There's levels. And he's embittered by this his soul. On this shehurek me'inyan of the key, that he's empty from anything, from a divine idea. She'ena meir benafshe, does not radiate, illuminate his soul. And therefore also the excitement of his emotions is going to be very external, because he's not getting it. And this teshuvah is more internal than the teshuvah of the level of ruach and emotions. Parentheses, v'zeu. This is the parentheses, 3 lines. V'zeu sha'teshuvah b'chinas neshama, and that's why this teshuvah is in the level of neshama. The hainu b'chinas primis ve'emikes. Neshama is more internal and more deeper. The kashem sha'aved neshama be'emikes, just like the service, the work in neshama is deeper. Sheb'chinas atzmis hameichin canal in the previous chapter, because that's the work with the etzem hameich, not the mind as it affects emotions, but the mind on its own. The same thing, the teshuvah is also in the depths, in the internal and depths of the nefesh. See, again, he keeps saying that the Veda and the exactly. The Veda and the teshuvah are very, very similar. Being that he's on the level of neshama, he has a knowledge and a comprehension of the divine. He's explaining the level that's missing here. Okay? He's explaining why it's deeper than ruach. Why is it a deeper teshuvah? And when he awakens, in other words, when the Rebbe Rashab is saying, what's the teshuvah in like? Either you get it or you don't get it. See, before the teshuvah can be you don't have ahava yirah. Here, what means the shama is about getting something. So what's the teshuvah? What are you teshuvah? That you don't understand it completely. That's why he's saying that the problem here is the hergish in the meich, the leitzich nicht. Here, interesting take here. It's not like teshuvah, it's not teshuvah on I didn't learn enough that day, or I didn't understand what I learned.
He understands it, but it's...
Yeah, that's what he's saying here. Right. So when he's me'ered b'teshuvah al heder ha-hergish, on the lack of the sensation, ha-yedeya mamasha nisrachik. So he knows at least. You see, the other levels don't really know what they're missing. This one knows, because he understands the idea. It's like someone who sees the king and understands him, but something's blocking him. So he knows what he's being, from what he's distant from what he's become distant from. And that's why the distance touches him truthfully in a deeper way than in an increasingly deep way. And in his own eyes, wow, he's like a real sinner and transgressor. Literally. So even if he didn't do any sin, because he appreciates and it's not getting to him, it's causing him to feel really pained. As if he did an avera, God forbid. It would be like someone who has access and understands the highest levels, and look at you. In other words, even deeper, what he said before about falling from the tree, this is even a higher fruit. Because there, it's deeper because it's a person of hergish, and he's capable of yirah, and he's not doing it. Here, more than that, you're capable, you understand it, and you don't touching you. It's not touching you. Because of the knowledge, his knowledge of godliness. And by tshuva, the feeling is intense, is even more so, like the recognition of the inner dimension of elikus. I'm not sure what he's adding here. I guess the tshuva is causing the hergish. That's why he very deeply feels how the evil.
Let's see if you skip the parentheses, you can read it. The main idea, but of course,
Yeah, I understand that. So, but the tshuva, I guess the tshuva means that the tshuva makes it even more sensitive to it when he's doing. No, but there's one state where you understand, but you're not doing anything about it. Then when you're feeling the tshuva, obviously the tshuva itself is awakening something, so it makes you really feel how bad you are, how distant you are. Okay, that's why he intensely feels how it's evil. Umar, azove, and the bitterness of his leaving, azove, of his rejecting or denying God. And that causes him to return with his entire heart, with his entire soul, from the depths and the innards of his soul. And through this he removes the concealments and the coverings, and he should become truthfully a container to the divine energy, that it should radiate and illuminate in a revealed way in his nefesh and in his mind and in his heart. Interesting. Nefesh, ruach, neshomo, it looks like. Okay, there we go. So we got the three levels. Wow. And on all these three levels of teshuvah, transmits a power and a help and a support from above. Both on the actual doing the teshuvah, and also that it should be sustained, that it should be protected afterwards, because you could also do it and goes back and regress. Like, for example, the teshuvah, the first level of teshuvah of nefesh, so it transmits to him the power from above that he should become truthfully embittered and pained al drochav v'inyanov on his paths and on his way and on his things, his behavior, his actions, his activities. That he should have a strong determination to change his ways. And Hashem watches, measures. Hashem Beichen, it says Leva Kloyes, usually it's Kloyes V'le. Hashem Beichen Leva Kloyes, the one who is Beichen, who knows, who examines, who inspects the heart, and the Kloyes is the kidneys. Yedeya, huh? Maybe Tess. Beichen means he's Beichen Kloyes V'lev. He checks. He's always watching. He's the watcher. He knows well the strong determination, hatev, the good and strong determination, and he gives him constant strength that he should go in the paths of good. And similarly is the level of teshuvah, the ruach, the second, and neshomo, the second and third levels. That there's a strength from above, a power, a support from above gets transmitted. Both that they should be awakened in teshuvah, and also that it should be sustained, that it should be a constant aveda, not just a one-time thing. And this is tsur mizgavenu, which is in neshama, and mogin yeshenu, which is ruach. Adenu Zenu, which he said was Malchus, that gives power to this, is the general teshuvah in the nefesh that comes because of distance. Remember we spoke about Bas. Bas on its own doesn't have the power to do Aved. Bina gives it power to get closer and become like Adenu Zenu. Right? It adorns it, if you remember. What is Adenu Zenu? Because from this Etzem Nekudis, the spark, the pintaliyah, the Nekudis Hayadis that he has. I skipped what is?
No, it's easier if you just skip for a second the parentheses.
Oh.
Then you go back to it.
Very much touches him, there's distance from the godliness. In the parentheses he adds, this is the point in the heart that's called Knesset Yisroel, the gathering of Israel. That's Adenu Zenu. Remember, Adenu Zenu is Malchus. So that's the level of Malchus which is there in everyone. That's only a general makif, because it's Malchus of Atzilus. It's not Kesed of Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. It's a general makif. Relatively speaking, it's a general that gives that spark. He adds now, in other words, what that Adenu Zenu does. Aha. So that's Kesed of Atzilus. That's Kesed Malchus of Atzilus. So Negelim Imnashna Chukut. Or Meseirid B'tshuva, and he's awakened B'tshuva Shleim Eliyaz B'chinas Kiruf. This is all Adenu Zenu. And he awakens with a complete tshuva to be b'chinas kiruv. That's Adenu Zenu. Okay. And now, after Adenu Zenu comes Shur Mizgavenu. This is now not b'chlal. He said Adenu Zenu is b'chlal. This is now specific. Now we're talking about specific aveda. Not just over your distance. Malchus is distant, and then the Kudus Hayadus, the spark, then the Malchus within the soul, gets awakened. Here, in the three levels of nefesh and neshama, shehein b'chinas biyah, this is b'ritza kol chad v'chad lefi madregose. Every individual according to his level. But kol zeh b'chinas hamakiv the Malchus. All this is the level of Malchus shenimshach madreges nishmose. Makif of Malchus, which is Adenu Zenu, it's transmitted on the level of his soul, depending where his soul is. Im hi mebriya, or yetzira, v'asiya. So in other words, Malchus of Atzilus gives you the strength in general, the Nekudas Hayadus. But it doesn't tell you, is it going to be an action-based? Is it going to be in midas-based, emotions, or is it going to be intellectual-based? And these are the individual Sarim. He's concluding the whole subject now that he, in all the four worlds, generally and specifically. Okay, very good. Summary. Kitzur. Yivayir chelke teshuvah de naran. He explains the different types of teshuvah. Chelke, different types of teshuvah of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Nefesh achetas. He toshuv b'sasur merah b'pel mamish. The nefesh achetas, nefesh that sins, returns, refraining from evil and doing good in action. B'charota amitis, in true regret. V'gam oz gam ha'kabola amitis. And then also the acceptance, kabola tev ahava, will be also true. I don't think he said charota, the word charota before, did he?
I don't know if he said Kabbalah.
He did Kabbalah, he did say. He said when his mismarim nafshe, Shamaridus nashi be'emes shemischazno oza Kabbalah v'heskemu amiti. He didn't say the word charota. Okay, fine. Okay. Gam hatshuva al gabes chamushleim gam hatshuva al gabes chachum. This shuva is also nefesh, is also on the dominance of the crassness, of the coarseness, that it shouldn't follow his nature, his inclinations. Gam al hedra kabol sel machshmam, and it's also on the lack of that acceptance, of that commitment and devotion. The teshuvah the ruach, the second is ruach. Hu al hedra aved davir. This is on lack of the service with your emotions. This is a mitzvah sesa. And also through this is the repair of the animal soul in a internalized, it's become a mensch, become a personality, identity that is internally human. But this shuva is more excitement and more passion, because ruach is passion. And even though action touches you deeper because it's more problematic. But the truth is also this touches very much because it's like the tree, like the fruit of the tree, from the top of the fruit falls further. Then comes the third neshama, teshuvah, the neshama, al-hedr yisoga al-akizru yizbonus. Shuva neshama is on the lack of comprehension and contemplation, divine contemplation. And this one has the deepest feeling, the deepest internal feeling, because he understands where he's at. And the power for all this comes from the transcendent forces of tzur, mogin, and mizgav. So here we have the individual transcendent forces and their impact on us, on existence. So this finishes a discussion that began many pages ago.
How do you know it finishes? Doesn't it further?
I know, I've looked. No, he continues further, but the impact of ksarim on our lives, he said, now he's going to go sum it up. Okay, so we'll stop here. We did chapter 78, Adip Lavedidika chapter 146 through pages 146 through 148.